I didn't plan on falling in love with a man who flies into burning buildings. Hell, I didn't even plan on falling in love with a man at all. The words hit me before I could stop them, like a confession echoing off the steel and glass of New York. The first time I saw Ethan, he was pulling someone out of a wrecked car on the FDR. Sirens screamed. Lights painted the night. And he moved through the chaos like he was born in it, fearless. Sharp. Too good for this world. And I, just another college kid who stayed too long in the library. Walking home with earbuds in, froze on the sidewalk. Watching him cradle a stranger like he'd known them his whole life. I should have kept walking. I should have minded my own business. But instead, I stood there until his eyes found mine. Just for a second. Under the flashing red and blue. Something in my chest shifted that night. Though I told myself it was just adrenaline. We met again 3 weeks later. Not in the middle of a crisis, but in a corner coffee shop down on 12th Street. He walked in, tall and exhausted, with his flight jacket hanging loose over one shoulder. He looked like the kind of man who carried the weight of a city but never complained about it. I was hunched over my laptop, pretending to study while really just scrolling through old notes I would never read again. "Mind if I sit here?" His voice was calm, grounded, like he could slow the whole world just by speaking. I nodded, heart racing for no reason I could admit. It was New York, people shared tables all the time. But the way he sat, the way his presence filled the air, made me feel like I was part of something rare. He ordered black coffee. No sugar. No cream. I remember thinking how unfair it was that someone could look that steady and taste bitterness straight, while I needed 3 pumps of vanilla just to survive the morning. He caught me staring, and God help Mayhay smiled. That was how it began. A series of accidents that didn't feel like accidents. Ethan told me he was a rescue pilot with the FDNY, specializing in aerial extractions when the city became too much fire and smoke for ladders and hoses. His schedule was brutal, his stories darker than I could handle. Yet he told them with a strange gentleness, as if trying to protect me from the sharpest edges. I told him about my small life, about being the first in my family to go to college, about wanting to write but never being brave enough to admit it out loud. He listened. That was the part that undid me. He listened like every word I spoke mattered. But there was a problem. There's always a problem. Ethan didn't believe in attachments. People who get close to me get burned. He said once, late at night, when the rain kept us stranded inside the coffee shop after closing. His eyes were fixed on the storm outside, but his voice was tight, like he was confessing something he hated to admit. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that wasn't true, that people like him deserved to be loved the most. But I stayed quiet, because a part of me was scared he was right. Still, I couldn't stay away. We kept meetings, sometimes planned, sometimes by accident, though I began to suspect he let the accidents happen on purpose. He would walk me home, never crossing the invisible line, never brushing more than the back of his hand against mine. The air between us was thick with everything unsaid. It wasn't until the night of the warehouse fire that the line shattered. I had been at a friend's party in Brooklyn, the kind of thing where music was too loud and beer was cheap. When the news alert hit our phones, massive fire breaks out near Red Hook. FDNY on scene. I don't know why I panicked. Fires happen in New York every day. But the thought of Ethan being there made my chest ache in a way I couldn't reason with. I left the party without telling anyone. Ran until my lungs burned. And by the time I reached the barricades, the sky above Brooklyn glowed orange. Flames licked the night. Smoke clawed at the stars. And there, high above, framed in firelight, was Ethan, harnessed to a chopper, lowering himself toward the roof of the collapsing building. My legs went weak. Every fear he had ever confessed to me, every wall he had built, all of it made sudden, brutal sense. And then he slipped. The cable jolted. The wind roared. And for one endless second, I thought I would watch him fall from the sky. My throat tore with his name, though no one could hear me over the chaos. He caught himself barely and finished the rescue, pulling two men out before the roof gave way behind them. When he landed, covered in ash, I pushed past the barricade like a madman. I didn't care about the cops yelling or the reporters flashing cameras. I just needed to see him, needed to know he was real, alive, still breathing. Ethan. My voice cracked as I reached him. He looked at me, startled, as if I shouldn't have been there at all. But when his eyes met mine, everything inside me broke. I didn't think. I didn't ask. I just grabbed his face with shaking hands and kissed him like the fire hadn't ended. Like the whole damn city could burn and I wouldn't care as long as he was still here. He kissed me back. God. He kissed me back hungry, desperate, as if he had been holding himself back for years. And then he pulled away, breathing hard, his forehead pressed against mine. You don't understand, he whispered. This can't. But I shook my head, tears burning hot. No, you don't get to say that anymore. I don't care how dangerous it is. I don't care if it hurts. I'm here. I'm not walking away. For the first time, Ethan looked terrified not of fire, not of falling, but of me, of us, of what it meant to finally be seen. And that night, under the shadow of smoke and sirens, something irreversible began. Weeks passed after the warehouse fire, but the kiss lingered like smoke in my lungs. Ethan avoided me at first long shifts. No texts. Radio silence that cut deeper than he probably intended. But then, one evening, I found him waiting outside my apartment building, leaning against his truck like he'd been there for hours. We need to talk, he said, voice low. My chest tightened, preparing for goodbye. But instead, he admitted something I never thought I'd hear. I can't stop thinking about you, and it scares the hell out of me. His honesty cracked me open. I told him I wasn't looking for safety. I was looking for him. That night, for the first time, he came upstairs, and everything between us changed. It wasn't some reckless blur. It was careful, hesitant, almost sacred. The way his hands trembled against my skin told me he was just as terrified as I was. But neither of us pulled away. In the soft lamplight of my tiny apartment, Ethan New York's fearless rescue pilot let himself be held. And I let myself fall without a net. Of course, love isn't enough to erase fear. There were nights he woke up from dreams of fire, drenched in sweat, whispering names I didn't know. There were mornings when he'd leave before sunrise, afraid I'd see the cracks in his armor. And there were moments when I wondered if choosing him meant choosing a lifetime of waiting by the window. Praying the sirens didn't mean he was gone. The breaking point came in December. A helicopter crash in Queens made headlines across the city. The news was everywhere, smoke billowing from the wreckage. Reports of casualties. Whispers of crew members missing. I sat on the floor of my apartment with the TV blaring. My phone clutched so tight it left marks on my palm. Waiting for a text. A call. Something. Hours passed. Nothing. When the knock finally came, I almost didn't answer. But when I opened the door, there he was limping, blood on his sleeve. Exhausted but alive. My knees buckled. I clung to him like I would never let go. That night, I told him the truth I had been holding back. If you ever think I can survive losing you by keeping my distance, you're wrong. The only way I'll survive is if you let me stay. Ethan looked at me with eyes that carried too much weight for one man. And then, quietly, he said, "Then stay." From then on, we stopped pretending. We built something fragile but real. Dinners squeezed between shifts. Walks through Central Park where no one cared if our hands brushed. Late-night talks about futures we were too scared to believe in. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was ours. The turning point came one spring afternoon. I met Ethan after his shift, and he surprised me by driving out to the Brooklyn Bridge. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and pink, and the city felt quieter than I'd ever known it. He leaned on the railing, wind tugging at his jacket, and for the first time, he spoke without fear. "You asked me once why I push people away. It's because every time I fly into fire, I wonder if I'll make it back. And the thought of someone waiting for might always felt cruel. But then you showed up. And somehow, the cruelest thing would be to let you go." I swallowed hard, my throat too tight for words. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," he said, his voice trembling. "But I want you in it. If you'll have me." I stepped closer, sliding my hand into his. "Ethan, I never wanted easy. I just wanted real." And this, I squeezed his hand. Meeting his gaze, "This is real." He kissed me then, slow and steady, not like the desperate fire of that first night, but like something built to last. And for once, there were no sirens, no smoke, no chaos, just us, framed by a city that finally seemed to pause long enough to let us breathe. Love with Ethan was never in my life plan. But maybe the best things aren't planned at all. Maybe they just happen like fire, like rescue, like two people colliding in the middle of New York and deciding against all odds to hold on. And as the bridge lights flickered on above us, I knew one thing for certain. I had fallen in love with a man who ran into danger for a living. And against every reason, every fear, every warning had chosen to run back to me. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.